Let's see here. Yeah, can you actually let me know if it sounds okay? Because I am on a completely new setup, and who knows if any of this is going to work. I think we got some good stuff to talk about today. Let me get this all up and done. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Yeah, this is a really loud keyboard. This is an old school, well, not old school, but this is a true mechanical keyboard that I brought out of the closet. And I'll explain why at the top of the show. Oh, shoot, I forgot to podcast. Oops, forgot to populate a field. Oh, I gotta open Teams. Oh, well. Make sure this is all up and running as expected. Get that open there. Why does this look so funny? Open the questions. Get started in 1 second. I was running late. I was talking on the phone to somebody. Where the heck is it? There it is. All right. I think we are about ready to rock and roll. I don't know if the audio is going to come across for this or not. Here's to hoping it does. Let's go. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Sam's Report, where I have made some terrible life choices. Terrible life choices. Let me explain why. For those of you who are watching the video, oh, I forgot to turn this thing on, but you can see the Xbox there. You can see whatever. You can, so things look different, but they should be the same unless you're a real astute observer. But one thing I've done is I've moved my primary office, and my primary, I call it whatever, my like writing office, upstairs, because I enjoy sunlight and it is becoming spring and beautiful outside. And there are no windows down here because I got to control the lighting for all the different stuff, and the windows are blocked, long story short. So where does the really bad decision come in? Well, bad decision numero uno. You see this chair I'm in? It's a nice chair. It's fun. It swivels, it rocks, and it's about, I don't know, like 8 inches too short. This is actually a chair that used to be in my daughter's bedroom. We moved some stuff out of there, primarily this chair, and I had this great idea. I was like, oh, I'll just go put it downstairs in the studio, and then when I'm podcasting, I can sit in here, and maybe it's okay. You guys can let me know, but it's like, everything is lower. Everything is lower, and it feels different, and I don't know if different is bad or different is good. But the problem is, like, I've not ADHD, that would be overselling it, but you fidget, and like I don't want that to be a distraction when I'm doing this stuff. But here we are, and back in the studio, completely new setup. I'm actually on a different computer. I have the audio hardware and everything else is the same, but like I had to reconfigure everything. I'm down one monitor. I have 3 monitors down here, but 2 are 4K, one is 1080p, and blah, blah, blah. Just completely overhauled the setup. That way I can move upstairs and be more happy and jolly, but I need to make sure the podcast studio is functional for First Ring Daily, for this podcast and all that stuff. And today is like the first podcast that I'm actually using it for. And so hopefully nothing goes bad. Also changing up some of the software we have been going, as a company, we've been using Teams a lot. And so now I'm still technically, I guess, using OneNote, but I'm not like fully using OneNote. So I'm trying to condense all my work-related stuff into Microsoft Teams. And part of that is show notes for this. And that way I only have to open one application to be able to find all my work-related content. And so I'm now using Teams to organize all my notes and try to keep track of this podcast stuff. And we'll see how it goes. The one annoying thing about Teams that maybe I did turn the computer on, or it just, I'm not imagining that, right? It just kind of appeared. So we will just, if you're not watching the video stream, I don't know what to tell you. But the Surface Studio behind me just turned on. It does its own thing, and now it's off. You know, people think that a lot of times Paul and I just make up like issues we run into, but as you can see, I don't know what happened right there. But anyways, back to Microsoft Teams. I'm throwing everything in there, including the show notes. And so you can add tabs inside of a team. And one of them is OneNote. And what I did was I added a tab for OneNote, and then you put the things in there. The only thing that's kind of annoying about it is that when you open that, you click that tab, then you have to wait for OneNote to like literally open inside of Teams. And it's like, I wish you could just get a notepad or just something to make it quicker, but that's minor. But this is starting the journey of replacing my digital work life all inside of Teams. And so far it's going okay. Teams needs some polish. I will definitely say that, but I'm liking it so far. And so far, it's allowing me to reduce the number of apps that I have to install and use, and it's good stuff. And so here we are, living the Teams life, trying to adopt that Microsoft lifestyle. Speaking of adopting that lifestyle, if you are using the, I guess you can call it classic OneNote, the 2016 version, that is going to be going away. Microsoft announced this week that they are making the UWP version the priority and the future. And that shouldn't become a big surprise. But if you are attached at the hip to the 26 iteration, I would not be attached at the hip to that. So, because it's going away eventually. And other interesting things that this week, Microsoft announced Windows Defender for Chrome. It's not technically, it is an extension. It is an extension for Chrome, and basically gives you Windows Defender-like protections inside of Chrome. Now, this is interesting because one of the primary reasons they said, hey, use Edge is because you get all this fancy Windows Defender protection, but now you can get it in Chrome. And so it's like, what's the deal? Why are they doing this? I think there's a lot of reasons why. One, they want to make Windows Defender kind of synonymous with protections and all that stuff. And they know a lot of their users are using Chrome. And so now they can say that they are protecting that endpoint. But also there's another reason too. And you got to remember, if you're using this extension, you are giving your data to Microsoft. Don't forget that, because then they get their browsing history. That's the only way they can tell if you're on a malicious website, is by tracking that kind of stuff. And so some people get a little nervous about that, but if you're not giving it to Microsoft, you're giving it to Google. It's going somewhere if you want to be protected. But the interesting thing here is to watch is Google has this stuff built in as well. Google isn't like ignorant and just says, oh, go whatever website. We've all seen like those large red banner things and says, don't go here from Chrome. And so now Microsoft is doing that with this extension. The question is, which one's better? Only time will tell, but this will be interesting little test. I'm not really thinking I want to go try to find malicious websites. Maybe I can do it in a VM and that way and see which one is actually blocking more. But for Microsoft, they're getting more data, and that's the only way that they can improve Defender on the web is with more data. So if they have an extension on Chrome, then they get more data back into Edge and all that good stuff, and they have a better product. So that's probably one of the reasons why they're doing it. Yep. And speaking of doing it, Microsoft and Xbox, a lot of stuff, interesting things going on here. For one, on a personal note, this white guy back here will very soon be replaced with an Xbox One X. I am now playing PUBG almost fully on the Xbox because I'm loving it with my friends. It is still a low FPS kind of jangled mess, but it's a very fun jangled mess. We got 2 chicken dinners back-to-back days, and we're having a lot of fun. And so I'm going to splurge next week, more than likely get an X. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, to see how that improves things. And I've used an X, but I've never owned one in my house, so that will be fun. But speaking of the Xbox, by the way, there was a new job posting this week by Microsoft. Actually, I think it was maybe technically late last week on the 10th, where they were saying they're looking for somebody with GDDR6 expertise. And so this kind of jives with things that I've heard, that a lot of people thought maybe the X was the last console from Microsoft. I don't know if I agree with that statement. Now, obviously, anything can change at any time, and at least we are years away from another generation of Xbox. But I've definitely heard that they're not saying that the X was the last console they will ever build. And so they are starting to look at hardware requirements and that type of thing, and GDDR6 would be a perfect feature for that, as long as it comes within, say, like the next 3 years. It's kind of roughly the timetable that I've heard. And what it would include, that's interesting, because you look at what the Scorpio offers, 4K gaming. The only thing I can think of that they could really build upon, and maybe they think Sony is going there and so they want to make sure they have something to match it, would be 4K at guaranteed 60 FPS. That's frames per second. That's the only real thing I can think of that they would add. I can't imagine 8K is going to be a thing anytime soon. 4K TVs are pretty far out there. I mean, I shouldn't say they're pretty far out there. A lot of people have them, but 4K content is still pretty hard to come by. It's definitely not really coming from cable channels at this time. So I don't know, other than 4K 60 FPS, maybe add in VR support and that kind of stuff, but that seems a little slow considering Sony already has that type of a solution. And yeah, we'll see. We will see what happens here, because that will be super interesting. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. You know, if you're in the belief of pouring one out for your homies, it has been officially 1 year since Wunderlist has died, and the transition, as we all know, has been botched. But I will tell you that I'm a little bit more optimistic about the to-do future now, because there's been a lot of changes inside of Microsoft, and they're continuing to do changes, including leadership of these teams. And I don't necessarily mean, Mary Jo reported this week that Joe B was now leading some of the new teams, including To Do. But I think the action, Joe is like up here a little bit. If he knocked down a peg, there's another leadership level, and I'm pretty sure I know who it is, but I'm not going to call it out yet. Is now leading To Do, and some other people that I have a lot more confidence in. And so there's a lot of things changing inside of Microsoft, continuing. We saw the major reorg with Terry leaving and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot more that's going on, and I just keep your eyes and ears open. They're at the lower levels. Not to saying that they're not important people; they absolutely are. But there's so many people moving. There's a lot more people going to Edge these days. Microsoft's, I don't know why they're taking so long took this long to put more people on Edge, but here they are. They're definitely moving people in that direction. And so keep your eyes and ears open for a lot of change. Now, typically when change happens like this, there's layoffs. I've been hearing whispers that people are concerned because July is typically the month where Microsoft makes their big cuts, because their fiscal year end is June 30th. And so people are wondering, with all these changes, are there going to be more cuts? I don't have any explicit direct knowledge, but I keep hearing from a lot of insiders that they are worried about this. Rightfully so, because layoffs are never a fun thing. They suck. And so just keep your eyes and ears open for that for sometime around July. Microsoft came back and said this reorg does not have direct ties to layoffs. But, you know, they have a way with words, and I'll be curious to see what happens. July is typically the bad month. So Microsoft is finishing up year-end preparations. Like I said, June 30th is the fiscal year-end. That's when their budgets reset and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of action. June 30th is going to come. And then if you're not familiar, August is typically like a dead month at Microsoft. A lot of people go on vacation that month because they get through the year-end. They settle in July, and then they take time off in August. And so other things announced this week from Microsoft, they announced a Linux thingy. I know it's a technical term, but it's called Sphere OS, and it's for the IoT world, and it's based on Linux. Now, Microsoft they're very careful in saying, no, we're not widely distributing a new Microsoft distro of Linux, but they have some containerized security features that they're building into Linux, and people are kind of like freaking out saying, is Microsoft giving up on Windows? Absolutely not. You got to remember, in the IoT space, Linux reigns supreme. There's no other real way to qualify it. Linux is just a better operating system, and now that Microsoft isn't so directly tied to Windows, This makes a lot of sense, and I think it's the right move for them, and it's called Sphere OS. If you're into the IoT world, this was announced this week. There's still some licensing things to, I think, shake out of it, but it's Microsoft's play into this world, which they said was like 9 billion devices last year. IoT, which sounds like a lot, but you remember IoT are just essentially sensors, and so they built a custom chip and all this good stuff, and they are definitely diving deeper into the world of Linux, but they're no stranger to this either, remember, because they have things running on Azure, like Red Hat and all this stuff, and they have the Windows subsystem for Linux, where they have like all those different distros available. So it's not like this is some crazy thing, but what kind of pings the bell in the back of my head is like, okay, if Microsoft's willing to embrace Linux for IoT, I could see them embracing Android for mobile with Andromeda. And I know I've talked about that before, but you can kind of see it's like, okay, they're realizing that there is a world outside of Windows, and how are they going to capitalize upon it? And so there you go. The other interesting thing that I forgot to point out about the Sphere OS is that Microsoft explicitly called out that they are leveraging Xbox knowledge to secure their IoT devices. Now, this sounds maybe a little distant, but if you think about it, they got to secure this thing back here because there's a lot of proprietary content, like gaming for that. And Microsoft doesn't want this thing hacked and people to turn it into a custom ROM machine. So they have direct access to this machine. So it has to be extremely secure. And Microsoft is leveraging that technology into IoT, their components, to make sure that they are hardened and battle ready. And so that's just kind of a neat tie-in about how their gaming tech and security stuff has real world use cases outside of the Xbox. And the last little thing here before we dive into the questions is Redstone 4. Where the heck are you? I don't know. I got like a runny nose this morning, but that's probably too much information or whatever. But Redstone 4 was supposed to be here, and then they ran into a bug, and then it's like, is it going to ship in April? Is 1803 really going to become 1804? This has been an interesting thing. Microsoft is trying to downplay some of this, but I think there had to have been a bigger problem potentially for them to do this, not to issue a cumulative update or something along those lines. And so I don't fully know the story. If you happen to know the insider story about what happened, other than the word, it's just bugs, I would love to know, because Microsoft isn't really giving us a whole lot of details at this time about why Redstone 4 is so late now. I think originally it was supposed to roll out wide scale next week. It was supposed to be to people who wanted to get it last week, and then this week maybe wide scale, or next week wide scale, and then be done. But clearly we're clearly not there yet. So we will see. All right, let's dive into the questions here, folks. Hit the refresh on the page, grab a drink of my drink. All right. Oh, good. Decent number. All right. Peter K dives in and says, in my last Windows upgrade, I got an extra partition on my SSD shown as full, and Windows Explorer shows it has nothing. Has anything ever had this happen with this extra partition? Disk management tool does nothing to delete it. Ooh. So my initial gut reaction when reading this was that it's a recovery partition, is my initial gut check. I've never had a partition created during a Windows upgrade. What I'd love to know is if that upgrade was to 1803 or if that was from the fall update, the fall creators update. Which, by the way, I sincerely doubt this is called the Spring Creators Update. I know I've hinted at it a bunch. I believe they were just going to call it the April Update. But I think they're doing away with that creators crap. Mostly because this update is a little odd. So, of course, I'm getting a phone call from probably Tire Discounters, where I dropped my car off this morning because I hit a pothole, and now my suspension is squeaking because it's pothole season, and Brad just likes throwing money into things that don't need to be paid for. That should have been whatever. If you've hit a pothole and ruined your car, you'll know the pain that I'm in this morning. Happened yesterday. It's just a chipper day. But seriously, back to that, I have to think that has to do something with potentially a recovery partition. So, yeah. Michael, if it's not, I would love to know more about how and what is and when it actually showed up, because that would probably give us a little bit more information. Michael EPS5 says, when will Throp mugs be available again? I've been meaning to get my hands on one. And then HR Elmgrove says, why not Sam's mugs too? And Sam's shot glass and tumblers. Sam's scotch glass would be amazing. Those mugs I don't think are going to be back in anytime soon. Potentially maybe we can try something, but they were a big pain in the ass. This is actually a little bit before my time. I started here like 2.5 years ago, and I think those were 3 years ago, and I remember there were some logistical problems with that stuff. HRLN Grove says, if I recall correctly, Microsoft ban wasn't based on Windows. Did the ban help convince Microsoft that Windows was just too big for some things? I think you might be onto something. I can't remember if it was band 1 or band 2, but definitely one of the band iterations wasn't based on Windows, and Linux typically runs better on these small things, so you very well could be onto something. Simon says, is there a cheap way to run my personal domain on Outlook.com now that they have removed the personal hosting for new signups? Is there a cheap way? I guess it defines cheap. I don't know personally. I'm not a big... I don't do this stuff all that often, mostly because for this exact reason that Microsoft flips the switch around. I run all my personal domains and stuff. This isn't a paid promotion through Namecheap, and that's just who I've run it through, and I've had fine luck, but I don't personally know about getting it through Outlook.com, mostly because I haven't tried. And there's the reason why they turned it off is because not many people were using it. It was becoming a huge issue, and that's why they passed it off, I believe, to GoDaddy. And then Bart says, do you expect Teams to come to consumer versions of Office 365 or a similar offering? I'm not sure about to the consumer version because you need multiple people, but what I do believe they're going to do with Teams is actually offer a free iteration. There was that freemium thing. There was a freemium tag or a whole bunch of tags in the latest developer edition of Teams, and so I believe there's going to be a freemium version, and that will probably take the cake for that. And maybe if you log in with your if you log in with your Office 365 home or personal account into the free version, maybe you'll get some extra storage or something like that. I could see them doing that. But as for if they're going to bring it to home and personal, I don't know. But I know that they're definitely working on a free iteration for those that need it. And that's a wrap, folks. It's been a very busy and odd week, mostly just because one, I like what you can't see here is that the webcam is actually in the middle of the screen. Like it's blocking my screen to get the eye line right. Otherwise you like see just, it's like a 45-degree angle coming from the top of the monitor. Looks a little ridiculous, but I think this might actually work out since I'm not using this machine as my daily driver and mostly upstairs now. But as always, folks, I hope everyone had a wonderful week. And if you got any good tips or tricks or whatever, make sure to shoot them at me on Twitter at BDSams, or you can email me just brad.sams@BWW Media Group. That's a whole entire mouthful, which Twitter is usually easier. And we got some stuff coming up where we're diving into build here in the very near future. I'm hoping the build sessions will give us a little bit more information. I am going to build. I will be arriving in Seattle on Saturday, so if you're in early, let me know. We can probably try to arrange something. I know there's going to be a meetup. I don't know what day yet. I haven't talked with Mary Jo to figure that out, but there'll definitely be a meetup at Build. I will be there. Paul will be there. Mary Jo will be there. Everybody you know and love that covers Microsoft will be there. And so next week will be exciting because I'll hopefully get my Xbox One X maybe Thursday or Friday. And I think that's about it, folks. So have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and I'll catch you right back here next time on the Sam's Report. Thanks for tuning in. Who called me? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Let's see here. It's either my car or I don't know. Because there's like multiple things going on. We're looking at putting an addition onto our house, so I have contractors calling me, which we're not sure. Man, the market is crazy inflated right now for these people, and so we're taking our sweet time working on this stuff because people want too much money, and I know roughly what this stuff should go for, and the market is a little oversaturated, and so they're jacking their prices up. So anyways, I could have been a contractor, could have been somebody calling about my car. I am not quite sure who the heck just called me, but so All right, folks. Well, appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully this all turned out well, and we will find out once I edit, and everybody yells at me if I screwed something up, but I think it worked out. All right, guys. Catch you later.